Good evening and welcome to First Baptist Church Hazel's Wednesday night Bible study. We're sure glad to have you here tonight. You're looking mighty good sitting out there compared to a lot of people I've seen today. You know, you're really good. But we thought we'd try one out that we hadn't sung in a while. A little bit of Alan Jackson. And it's a really awesome song. If I can get you to stand. Can you hear this? If I surveyed all the good things that came to me from above, if I could count all the blessings from the storehouse of love, I simply ask for a favor of Him beyond mortal ken, and I'm sure that He'd grant it again. I want to stroll over heaven with you some glad day when all our troubles and heartaches are vanished away. Then we'll enjoy the beauty where all things are new. I want to stroll over heaven with you. So many places of beauty we long to see here below, but time and treasures have kept us from making plans, as you know. But come the morning of the rapture, together we'll stand anew. Then I'll stroll over heaven with you. I want to stroll over heaven with you some glad day when all our troubles and heartaches are vanished away. Then we'll enjoy the beauty where all things are new. I want to stroll over heaven with you. I want to stroll over heaven with you. Amen. Looking forward to it, actually. Now we'll do this major switch here to Tammy Wynette. Oh, I know you've all heard this, and I know you know who the man at the river is. That's the one
You're going to speed up anyway. So
I'm trying to slow it down. I get way.
she's going to speed it up in the middle of the song. It's fine. Just buckle up. It's fine.
Let's all go down to the river. There's a man walking on the water. Come along with me, for I want to see this man walking on the water. Well, he can raise the dead from the grave, change the water, turn it into wine. He can make the lame walk, he can make the dumb talk, and open up the eyes of the blind. Well, let's all go down to the river. There's a man walking on the water. Come along with me, for I want to see this man walking on the water. Jesus is the man at the river, and he's washing people's sins away. He can save your soul if you give him control. Be ready for the judgment day. Let's all go down to the river. There's a man walking on the water. Come
right. Good evening. How is everybody tonight? Excellent. Good. All right. If you have your Bibles, go on and turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, which is where we will be tonight. Pastor Lee is officially out of town, and so you guys are stuck with me tonight. Again. What chapter? Chapter 7. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Okay, good. All right, before we get into Ecclesiastes 7, let's see who was paying attention last week. What do y'all remember from Ecclesiastes 6? I've put all of y'all on the spot. Okay, there's some rich and the poor in there. It's okay, I'll catch y'all up. So, what we talked about quite a bit last week was this idea of contentment. To be content with the good gifts that God has given to us, to be content with our lot in life, and then to be content with who we are and then what God has made us, which is part of mankind, right? That's what we are, and that's who we are. And so tonight, we're going to get getting into chapter 7. There's some themes that are going to be connected and similar, but we'll also sort of get off into some new things a little bit as well. So to really set us up for chapter 7, I actually want to start back. Let's start back in verse 10 of chapter 6. Verse 10 of chapter 6. It says, "Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage of man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun?" So again, just a quick recap of this section. So God has named man. This naming also carries with it the idea of dominion. God also exercises dominion over man. And so we're not able to contend with God as far as what it is that we are or even what's best for us, right? God has created us and he knows the best way for us to go about living our lives. And so with that in mind, the key to really understanding the first half of chapter 7 is the question that we see in verse 12. Who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? And so the first section of chapter 7 is going to at least answer this question in part. So the main idea, the main point of this one is it is wise to meditate on our own mortality, right? The fact that we are going to die one day. So let me ask y'all a question. How do you guys feel about your impending and imminent demise tonight? We feeling good? Are we ready? Are we not? How are we feeling about this? Yeah. Yes. So let's, with that in mind, let's go on and read the first few verses of Ecclesiastes 7. "A good name is better than precious ointment, in the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth." Sounds pretty depressing, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, for sure. Yes, exactly. So I think on the surface it does sound pretty depressing, but the preacher of Ecclesiastes is trying to make a point, right? And the point isn't that, hey, we should all be giddy about the day that we're going to die, and we should look forward to it in that way, or that we should always be mourning or always be sad or even depressed, which is how the first reading of this kind of makes us feel just a little bit. He's already said back in chapter 3 that there's a season for everything, right? There's a season to mourn, right? But there's also a season for dancing or for joy, right? These other things. So, like, how do we reconcile what he's saying here with what he's already said before? His point is that it's good and wise for us to consider the fact that one day, each and every single one of us is going to die. That's why it's better to go to the house of mourning there in the passage, which is more or less a funeral, than to go to the house of feasting, right? It's because funerals, right, memorial services for us today also, they bring death right in front of us, don't they? And it really makes us slow down, stop, and think about what that means for us one day, sooner or later. And so the question is about this dying. Hopefully, we want to have and experience a good death. This idea of a good death is pretty prevalent in the ancient Near East, including in the time that Ecclesiastes is being written. And that's having a good death is really a way of celebrating a life that's well lived. And so for us, right, we're going to want to be able to say with the Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy 4:7, he says, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." And so the way that we have a good death is to live a godly life during our lives. It's a funeral or a memorial service ought to be a reflection, right, of the way that we lived our lives. And that's certainly true of the many funerals and memorial services that we've done here. And you can get a pretty good sense of how it is that somebody lived their life based on what is said about them, right? And again, that's just a reflection, right, of their life and how it is that they went about living their lives. But this is contrasted back with Ecclesiastes 6:3. If y'all will remember from last week, the man who he was given everything that he could ever want from God. He had wealth. He had all the stuff he could ever want. He even lived at 2,000 years, and he had 100 children, and yet he couldn't enjoy any of it. And there was not even a burial for him. Right? That's an example of a bad death, a poor death. Right? Is no burial, and you'd figure that having 100 kids, somebody would step up and take care of that. Right? But again, it's a reflection of the type of life that he lived. And so for us, we want to be sure that we're walking in wisdom, that we're walking in godliness in our lives, right, to live a good life, which is reflected, again, in a good death. All right, y'all have any thoughts or questions about the first few verses? Yes? Mm-hmm.
Shows maturity. And for one, I'm from a very large extended family, and I've also lost people at young ages. And it is wisdom to know that mourning is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can get over it. And also, once you've gone through that, you come alongside somebody else and give them comfort.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. The mourning process is a good process to go through, and it is helpful. I agree to be able to come alongside somebody else, maybe that hasn't had to mourn in that way before, and help walk with them through that. Yes, sir.
Depending how close the person dying is close to you, I had to get to a point where I stopped being sorry for myself because I lost my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I had to start thinking of my loss, start thinking about her gain. And it took me a long time to do that. One of her son has still had a hard time dealing with that.
Yeah.
Her daughter, we're on the same page. We like to listen to her songs or tell them, but it took me I had to go through 2 grief sessions before I finally had to detach myself, or not a good word. Accept that.
Yeah.
That'd be the better word for it.
Yeah, and that also brings up, everybody mourns in a different way sometimes. There's not a one-size-fits-all bill when it comes to mourning, right? Yeah, very good. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It is does provide a great opportunity to look at the nature of sin and the consequences of sin and the nature of the fallen world that we live in, which sounds a little bit like Ecclesiastes 7. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep moving along. So, just like going to the house of mourning instead of the house of feasting here in the first few verses of chapter 7, it's definitely a more difficult experience, right? We would rather go to the house of feasting than the house of mourning if given a choice, right? More times than not. But then, difficult things that happen to us in our lives or that we experience in our lives are used by God to shape us and form us and mold us into the image that He wants us to be in, which is the image of His Son, which is the image of Christ. Helps us to grow in our faith in Christ, especially if we respond the right way to those things. And it's similar with this next section as well, the next few verses, where it really has to do with wisdom and the need really to be sure that we hold on to the wisdom that we have. So let's keep going. This is verse 5, starting in verse 5. It is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fools. This also is vanity. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. So, one of the things that we do as faithful friends in fellowship with each other here at the church is we admonish one another. So, one of the things that we want to do is if we see something that our friend is maybe involved in, or maybe it's a sin that exists in a blind spot for them, we want to, in grace and in truth, go to them and point this out to them. It's better, verse 5, it's better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise rather than sort of looking the other way or trying to look past it and allowing them to continue on that path that they're on, right? And then the inverse is also true, right? Maybe we have a blind spot, or maybe we have a sin, a favorite pet sin that we have. And what we want and what we need is a faithful friend to come along and call us on it. Once again, in grace and in truth, right, to help us, right, along this path of sanctification and becoming more and more like Christ, right? It's Proverbs 27:6, right? Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And so we definitely want to be sure that we're receiving those godly rebukes that are there in our lives. And what this does is it helps us to maintain the level of wisdom that we have, right? And wisdom, it's more than just the head knowledge. It's also the living it out, right? Having the knowledge and living it out at the same time. And so just because we're at this particular level of wisdom right now in our lives, that's no guarantee that we'll be able to maintain that, right? That's something that we need to be sure that we are keeping a watch on so it doesn't go away, so it doesn't get away from us, right, through any of the foolish things that we might do, right? And then the result of that is greater and greater spiritual maturity, right, for all of us, which is really what we're after. So to kind of illustrate this point, right, even about sin that may creep in or the temptations that we face, I wanted to read you guys a quote. So there was a man who looked back and he wrote about his life from the time that he was born in his autobiography. And he wrote that when he was 16 years old, he was running around with a group of his friends and they would get in all kinds of trouble and mischief and things like that. And this is what he wrote. He said, there was a pear tree near our vineyard loaded with fruit that was attractive neither to look at nor to taste. Late one night, a band of ruffians, myself included, went off to shake down the fruit and carry it away, for we had continued our games out of doors until well after dark. We took away an enormous quantity of pears, not to eat them ourselves, but simply to throw them to the pigs. Perhaps we ate some of them, but our real pleasure consisted in doing something that was forbidden. It was not the pears that my unhappy soul desired. I had plenty of my own, better than those, and I only picked them so that I might steal. For no sooner had I picked them than I threw them away, and tasted nothing in them but my own sin, which I relished and enjoyed. If any part of one of those pears passed my lips, it was the sin that gave it flavor. So this is from Augustine of Hippo, his Confessions there. And if you know anything about Augustine of Hippo, he would later become a Christian in life, and he's one of the probably the most influential church father of all time. But this was his life, right, back before he was a believer. And so there are certainly those of us who have this same natural inclination, right, to do things that are rebellious, that are sinful, just for the sake of doing those things. And this is especially the case before we're saved, right, before we come to know Christ. But as Christians, right, God has given us a new heart and new affections for Him. And so we don't normally do the same sort of thing, right? We don't normally go looking for sin just for the sake of the rebellion and against God. But with that being said, there are other ways that we as believers might be tempted. And so what we see is back in the passage, if you look, in verse 7, surely oppression drives the wise to madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. So I don't think most people actively go out looking for bribes, but if they come, right, this is a sudden temptation that pops out of, it could be out of nowhere, right, or feels like it's out of nowhere, right, but it's outside of ourselves. And so that temptation is there and it exists. And what we want to do is be sure that we are looking out for those things. Now, personally, I don't think I've ever been offered a bribe before. I don't know about you guys. I'm not, no, definitely not. But the principle still applies, right, of temptations that exist outside of ourselves that present themselves to us. And again, we want to steer clear of those sorts of things. We want to be wise in those things, not compromising with the world, right? It would lead us to live foolishly and lose the wisdom in living that God has given to us. All right, y'all have thoughts or questions about this section?
I guess a bribe wouldn't necessarily have to be money, right? It could be position and power, influence.
It could be a lot of things.
A lot of things. Is that position plus money?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. My mind certainly runs to money first. You know, when it comes to bribes, like, you know, the Monopoly Man money bag kind of a thing, like, hey, you want to sell me Broadway? You know, kind of a thing. Yep. It's a good point. All right, let's keep going. This is going to be we'll hit verse 8 and 9. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. So how many of you guys have started something that you never finished? Yeah. So right there in verse 8, right, better is the end of a thing than its beginning, right? Beginnings can be a lot of fun, right? There can be a lot of excitement. There can be a lot of sort of energy around a new beginning of something. It could be, your New Year's resolution, hey, I'm going to go to the gym every day. And then, you get into February and turns out not so much. Or maybe you started your Bible reading plan for the year and you made it to Numbers or Leviticus, and then that's where your Bible study or reading plan for the year went to die. It could be you started a new project at home, right, or at work, or what have you. And those are exciting, but that's why the end of a thing is better than its beginning, because it's an indication that we saw that thing through. Make sense? Okay, we're tracking.
Sometimes the attraction quickly loses.
Say it again.
Sometimes the attraction quickly is short-lived.
Yes. Yeah, that burst of energy that you get for something new, that can definitely wane pretty quickly, right? And that's why that patience is so important, right? To patiently stick with it and see it, excuse me, see it all the way through to the end. Yep.
There's a sense of satisfaction when you see it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually look at it and appreciate, okay, I'm looking at crafts, okay?
Yeah.
You start something like that, and if you just leave it a mess, like I do a lot of times, but when it's finished, it makes you feel good that, look what I did.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It is very satisfying when you get it done. I'm very thankful for my wife for helping me finish projects around the house. It's like that sign at, I don't know if y'all have seen it at Hobby Lobby. It's, if a man says that he'll finish this project for you, there's no need to remind him every 6 or 7 months. That's me. That is me, 100%. So I'm very thankful for her for spurring me on to finish those sorts of things and to finish well, even if it takes much patience on her part. Yes. We also see here this relationship between pride and being patient right here in the text. And I actually do pride myself on being a pretty patient person, except for the times that I'm not, which can be especially with our kids, and where, oh, hey, we have somewhere to be, or hey, we're running late to get y'all to school on time, or patience very easily flies out the window and gets replaced by frustration or anger and those sorts of things. And so, it's something that we definitely want to avoid, right? We want to be patient, not just with our kids and families for sure, but also in all things, right? In all the things that we set out to do. We want to be patient in those things and then avoid anger and frustration that wants to come and replace that. All right, thoughts, questions on those verses? All right, let's keep going. Verses 10 through 12. This has to do with the advantage of wisdom. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. So, okay, how many of us are guilty of, what's that, verse 10? Of saying, man, I wish we could go back to the good old days. Sometimes, sometimes for sure. Especially, the world and technology has been advancing so fast. It's like, man, I remember the good old days of, playing my PlayStation 1. I'd play college football 20, not even 20, like 98 or something on there. Things like that. And then, it could be anything. That's a light example. It could be anything, right? Anything that we kind of want to look back to and point at and say, hey, those really were that was the golden age, right? We really need to get ourselves back there. But he says pretty clearly that it's not from wisdom that we ask this. It's not for us to try to bring the past here or to try to get ourselves back. But we want to live fully lives of wisdom here in the present, right? Instead of dreaming about what has been and what is already past. And so in verse 11, we're back to the question that was asked in Ecclesiastes 6:12. What is good for man? Or what is better for man? And the answer here is that it is good to have an inheritance and to use it with wisdom. Does that surprise you guys that he would write that? It shouldn't. So, wealth is pretty neutral, right? There's nothing inherently wrong or evil about having wealth, just like there's nothing inherently good or virtuous about being poor or not having wealth, right? It's very, very neutral, right? The question is, do we use these things and exercise these things with wisdom, or do we do it instead as fools? Next, I really like this verse. The protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. So, have you guys ever seen anybody do something that was just really dumb, and you sort of you had to ask yourself, maybe quietly or just in your head, how is this person still alive? Because what they did was so just doesn't make any sense. So years ago, my wife and I, we went camping next to the Guadalupe River down there in central Texas. And it was a really nice campsite. I mean, it was right on the river, which was pretty cool. It was down this steep bank, and you had the water down below. And our campsite, though, there were stairs that went down from where we were, kind of up top down to the river. And so there was this guy. He only had one hand. I don't know what happened to the other one. Probably something not smart. But he decided it would be a good idea to climb up this tree that was kind of stretched over the water, way high over the bank. From the side of that thing, he climbed way up to tie a rope on it to make a swing, to swing off into the water. Problem is, he misjudged the swing, and he snapped his leg. Yeah, and so here's a guy with one hand. He's hobbling up the steps with one good leg, and it's just kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. How are you still breathing, dude? It seems like maybe you're not exercising wisdom in your life. Exercising wisdom can certainly prolong our lives. All right, let's keep going. This is verses 13 and 14. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. So what's happening here is the preacher he's been looking at man an awful lot so far. Now he's turning his gaze from man over to God instead, and the works of God. And so normally I think in verse 13, when we read that word crooked, we tend to think that, crooked here has something to do with being unethical or something that's immoral. And that's not the meaning here, right? It really has to do with the mysterious nature of God's works. It's things that God does or allows to happen that we don't totally understand, that we can't wrap our minds around, right? It seems crooked to us, right, instead of straight. And so sometimes, right, we have days of prosperity, other days we face adversity, but ultimately God is in control of both, right? He's the one who's sovereign and has providence over all things. And so the focus here, we saw before, we can't go back to the golden age of the good old days, right? Here we don't know what's coming in the future. Once again, we want to live wisely in the present here, right? There's a theme, if y'all have noticed that. So the question is, when it comes to living wisely, do we submit to God, his design for the world, and his design for man, and are we living our lives in wisdom and contentment instead of foolishness, or are we doing what so many that have come before us have done? All the way back to Adam and Eve in the garden, rebelling against God and his design and his rule and submitting to the serpent instead. Or like the men who tried to build the Tower of Babel trying to make a name for themselves, right? Are we doing those things? Are we rebelling? Are we kicking against God? Or are we submitting ourselves to the creator of the world and the creator of mankind? It's a hypothetical question. You can think about it if you would like to. So let's move on. Let's keep going. So in this next section, it does have some connections to the first half of the chapter, but it also really is going to focus in on the sinfulness of mankind. And so we'll pick it up in verse 15. In my vain life, I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who prolongs his life in his evil doing. Be not overly righteous, and do not make yourself too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Be not overly wicked, neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of this, and from that withhold not your hand. For the one who fears God shall come out from both of them. Wisdom gives strength to the wise man more than 10 rulers who are in a city. All right, at first glance, first reading, there was some stuff in there that sounded kind of strange, right? Like, hey, you can be too righteous, almost. Did y'all notice that? So in Scripture, there are these terms like righteous or wicked. They definitely can refer to like the moral element of being righteous or being wicked. But there are other potential meanings. And righteous or wicked could also refer to being declared right or wrong in a legal context or with any sort of dispute or argument, those sorts of things as well. And that's really what's in view here. So what the preacher is saying is that the man who's right in any sort of an argument or a dispute or a disagreement, wrong by the end of his argument by coming to a wrong conclusion. Maybe he's correct in every area, but he insists on being vindicated in all the different details, right, of a particular argument. Like, it's not that hard to imagine, right? Like somebody that's like, okay, I want to be right, but I want to be so right, I will concede nothing, right? And maybe some of the minor things aren't quite right. This is the guy who is tries to be too righteous, right, or too wise. Here. Like I said, it really has to do with arguments and disputes and things like that. And so someone who is wise knows when it's better not to go all in on winning an argument, right? So there are times that Scripture tells us, hey, like on your way to court, settle your dispute with your accuser. Like wash your hands of that. Like get out of that. Reconcile with each other instead. Jesus says that in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. There's also times, like in 1 Corinthians, when it's better to suffer wrong, to go on and suffer wrong than see the church's witness and reputation dragged through the dirt. It's also true. Okay, how many of you guys have ever argued with your spouse? If you're married, how many of y'all have ever argued with your spouse? You never. Yeah. Probably all of us if we're being honest with ourselves. And that's okay. Arguments aren't always a bad thing. However, we know from experience that if you win an argument with your wife, I'm talking about me now, if I win an argument with my wife, actually, somehow I still lose. How that works? Yeah, that's the truth, yeah. And it works both ways, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm right and I know I'm right and I press it and I win, right? What happens? Well, there causes a rift in the relationship, right? Now we have to work to repair that. We have to work, again, to live in unity with one another. So really, I might have won, but at the same time, I lost, right? Everybody loses. That's how it goes. And I would say for the record, the inverse is also true. If she is right and I'm completely wrong and she really just hammers the point home, and just has to destroy me in this argument, same thing, right? Now she's married to a loser, right? That's what happens, and you don't want that. Nobody wants that. It's not good. So this requires wisdom, right? To argue, to have disputes, but to do that well, right? Ultimately to reconcile. And so, again, it requires wisdom. And ultimately, the one who fears the Lord, it's there in the passage, and has wisdom will be able to navigate those different circumstances to know, hey, when is it time to fight tooth and nail over here? Or, hey, when is it to go on and let this one go? Or, when's the time to, hey, we're going to press the point, but only so far. Well, when's the time to reconcile, right? These things all take wisdom to know. But if we're fearing the Lord, we can find strength and be supported spiritually during those times, even if we're up against great men of influence, right, in the city. All right, thoughts on that? Oh, we have thoughts. Yes, Paul.
Number 17, I got to ask this question. It sounds to me like he's giving some kind of legitimacy to wickedness. He just said, do not be excessively wicked. Now, it's almost like saying, it's okay to be wicked, just don't be too wicked.
It seems that way. I think, again, it has to do with being wrong in an argument or declared wrong in an argument there. So in the same way that being overly righteous means being correct or being vindicated in an argument, yeah, the inverse is true there. Yes?
I was just going to say, I agree with what you're saying, but I see it more broadly. Through my study of the Word, I have gone to just about every Protestant denomination that there is in the United States, looking for one that I felt was right for me. I have seen people that are so righteous that they're not any good for this world,
Oh, yeah.
and so righteous that you just want to flee.
Run when you see him.
I've heard a man in church say, I haven't sinned for 3 weeks.
Ooh. Well, quite a claim.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I pledged that church.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you have wisdom, you know when to insert your beliefs and to move someone to Christ. You can't beat them over the head
Right.
because that repels people.
Yeah.
Requires humility.
Oh, for sure. And I think righteousness generally does. Like Paul said, yeah, that guy, he just instantly sinned, right? It's like, yeah, pride. For sure. Yes. And that's a tricky one because, at what point does righteousness, if you're just so righteous, chances are, and if you see yourself that way, chances are you're actually self-righteous more than righteous, right? Because, yeah, humility is a huge thing for believers, yeah. All right, cool, let's keep going. All right, I think we're on verse 20. Yes. Verse 20. Surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. This one's pretty straightforward, and ought to sound familiar to us because Paul, the Apostle Paul, in Romans 3 quotes, very good, yes. When he's talking through the sinfulness of man, he actually uses this passage, and the preacher here narrows down the application for us there in verse 21. Hey, everyone's sinful. We shouldn't be too offended when someone curses us or says something about us personally, regardless of who they are. And so this does tend to upset us, and I think that's a very natural response. But I would like to quote the famous Prince of Preachers, Charles Spurgeon, who once famously said, "If any man thinks ill of you, do not be angry with him, for you are far worse than he thinks you to be." And I don't think he's wrong. All of us are sinful. We all have sin, and we're often tempted to downplay the depths of our sin that we have in our fallenness. And so, we also know that we've said things or thought things about others that we shouldn't have. right? It says, hey, in your heart, you know that this is true. And so we want to be sure that we're not doing things that give ourselves a pass and then condemn other people for the exact same thing, right? That's what the Pharisees did. We want to avoid that. So if anybody says anything against us, we should be ready to just let it go. It's okay. It's like the Frozen song. Let it go. Yeah, I won't sing. Whew, that was close. I almost started singing. Break out into song. Okay, let's keep going because we are running low on time. Verses 23 and 24. All this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which has been is far off and deep, very deep. Who can find it out? So the preacher here, he says that the wisdom that he has is not enough to test all things, right? To get into the nitty gritty of all of the ways that God has created and formed and governs and upholds the cosmos and the world. And then if you look, those things that are far off in verse 24, those far off and deep things are things that have happened in the past. Those are in the past. They're done. They're completed. Even with the wisdom that he has, he can't look back and totally make sense of everything, of all things that have gone on. And so how much more difficult is it to fully figure out and understand what it is that's going on in the present? It's kind of what he's saying here. Now, just because we can't understand all things doesn't mean that we can't grasp some things about the realities of God's world. So let's hit 25 to the end. I turned my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom in the scheme of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. Behold, this is what I found, says the preacher, while adding one thing to another to find the scheme of things, which my soul has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 I found, but a woman among all these I have not found. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So again, the preacher says he can't know everything about the way that God has ordered the cosmos and the way that God has ordered the world. He's going to try anyway. He's going to try to discern and find wisdom about how some of these things work. And then try to also figure out foolishness at the same time. And so in verse 26, he focuses on one part of folly and one part of foolishness. And he says this is a woman who entraps men. And more likely than not, this is talking about adultery, an adulteress, which I know Pastor Lee has walked with you guys through doing Proverbs. Yes? Yeah. Same exact thing is in view here. And so here the fools don't resist, and they're taken by her, while the godly man resists and escapes. And so in verse 27, the preacher moves on, and he tries to understand men and women both, but more generally. And, not just those who sin without giving it a second thought. Which is funny because he says, behold, right? I'm going to tell you something that's really, really important. And then he winds up saying, yeah, I can understand one man in 1,000, but women, nope, no chance. Can't understand them at all. Which is pretty much what he says, right? Which, yeah, I can see that for sure. It makes a lot of sense. This is wisdom, yes. Yes. Yeah, he had 1,000 wives, and he couldn't figure it out. So there you go. So basically, humans, both men and women, are like a Rubik's Cube to him that he just can't figure out. Like, not the one with like three little, the 3x3 ones, but like the really big ones that I don't know how those people figured out. But the preacher here definitely wouldn't know how to do that for that to work. And so finally, we land on verse 29. It says, see, this alone I found. So here's kind of like the epic, here's what we get from all of these thoughts and everything that we've worked up to this point, the center of Ecclesiastes. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So mankind is fallen, even though God created us perfect, right? God created mankind good, even living together. It was very good. Everything is very good at creation. And yet, we live in this sinful world, right? It's this tension that exists, like things like work. Work is a gift. Work is a good thing. It's something that's good that's given to us by God. However, because we live in a fallen world, right, it wears us out, right? The toil and the sweat and everything else, it's not what it was meant to be, right? And so he's working to reconcile these things in the book of Ecclesiastes. So, okay, I only went a little late. So let's, does anybody have any final thoughts or questions before we go to our prayer sheet? All right. Let's go on and move that direction.